Good Wednesday morning, everybody. Meteorologist Casey Cloud here in the Weather Center tracking Tropical Storm Elsa, getting the latest information in from the National Hurricane Center, trying to keep you, your friends, your family safe. And we're looking outside where I'm at, in towards dark, and you do see what is going on. Some of the trees moving. They were blowing around a little bit more a moment ago, as we've had one of these bands, the strongest band so far, move on through a gust that looks like only so far to 16 miles an hour, not even as high as what we saw with some of the scattered action yesterday. But that number and what we're going to see here is going to increase as we're looking ahead. It seems like around noon or so is when we're going to have some of the worst of the weather, so something to kind of watch out for sure. You see the trees blowing around just a little bit more right now as we're looking outside at this very moment at some of the action here, trying to give you a visual to exactly what is going on here with Tropical Storm Elsa. Latest information here is that at about 7:30 or so, the center was west-southwest of Cedar Key, steadily moving northward. As let's go ahead and pop up our radar now. We'll move away from this, I think. It'd be best off going to the Doppler radar technology at the moment here. So here's what's happening. You see some of the storminess moving here along U.S. Highway 3 running around Stark, but then as we get out toward the Gulf of Mexico, you see that center, maybe even an eye here, trying to pop on off the Jacksonville radar, at least there within some of our different looks at things. And it looks like increased thunderstorms near the center will help strong winds mix down to the surface, especially along the immediate Dixie County coastline here over the next couple of hours. And torrential rainfall is also moving into Dixie County, posing an increased risk for some flooding as well. So we have to be mindful of this here, getting some really strong winds around Cedar Key over the last little bit. And you'll be able to go ahead and see that somewhat on our Cedar Key fire and rescue camera here. Weather stand, we've had gusts here to about 60 miles an hour. So at the last check, you see it's really nasty down there towards Cedar Key and Levy County. A hurricane warning remaining in effect for parts of Dixie, Levy, and Citrus counties. So watching the situation very carefully indeed as we move away from that for right now. We'll pop back the radar for a second. We'll also have some graphics set aside. Now, we're going to get new updates here soon, at least in terms of the advisory, but I'll go ahead and pop up what we do have here as just a little while ago, and this is what we have showed you here. We showed it to you during our tornado warning covered earlier. No active tornado warnings right now. We're able to kind of transition our coverage here to talking more about the actual wind threats, the storm surge threats, and also that heavy rain threat for now. Of course, if there's tornado warnings, we'll go back to them. But at the 5 a.m., we had max sustained winds of 65 miles an hour here. That moving off toward the north at 14. That minimum pressure at 1,004 millibars. You see here 60-mile-an-hour winds are still expected as this gets toward the Swanee River Valley later on as we look toward the afternoon hour, and maybe even just west there, really, as we're looking. I'm looking at some of our other tools here that we have in our system. We've been showing you different things here. We've been on this morning. We were just kind of more in that tornado covered mode as we were getting things set up here to go more long form here with the actual storm itself, doing something a little different because we haven't had a storm quite like this here since we've been doing cloud weather over the last couple of years. So again, let's go ahead and kind of look at some different perspectives here. We do have that other viewpoint now pulled on up, I think. So again, there's your graphics, there's your advisory at the 5, but here is that track, and I'll go ahead and kind of move that up just a little bit here. You see that center maybe actually going more toward that Dixie and Taylor County line, and toward Lafayette County there, and over even maybe into Madison and Hamilton, which would put the worst on the east side here in this cone. You see the cone here toward Lake City even, but just kind of interesting to see this here because that means some of the worst is a little off toward the west because just immediately to the east you're going to have some of the worst of the conditions that Elsa has to offer. So I've seen some of our winds, actually Keystone, the highest wind here, this was at 7:35, a gust of 35 miles an hour, not extreme, but some of the stronger wind that we're seeing toward our inland counties so far. We did have the gust there earlier, again, towards Cedar Key in that high 50 range at the last check. And looking at my anemometer here, we're seeing gusts about 10 miles an hour right now. That rain really coming down, already about an inch so far. These tropical rains really can produce that rainfall here really quickly, really efficient rainfall producers here as we look back outside once again. So again, tracking Elsa very carefully here in the Weather Center. We have so many things. I know. Just trying to keep you, your friends, and your family safe here this morning. We're at 7:50 right now. Let's go ahead. We'll probably take a break here as we get ready for the 8 o'clock update. But again, watching Elsa here very carefully. We'll go over a couple other things and for just resetting here as well for maybe new viewers joining in on this stream. We were on earlier, but we're watching things carefully here indeed. Going over to the graphics, we do have some of those threats around Stark. Still going a little gust about 60. We had this weekend down to a tropical storm. We're just kind of waking up. I know I've been up here most of the night tracking things, so it doesn't seem like new information to me. But some of you waking up at 2 a.m., they did downgrade this to a tropical storm. So that's some good news at least. We're watching to see if anything kind of re-evolves. We've seen increased organization versus what we saw late last night and early this morning. So that's something to monitor here as the Weather Service in Tallahassee is kind of backing that up. So we're staying with our risk levels pretty much here. 40 to 50 unsustained to start, gusts to 60 possible. Isolated 8 inches. We're already up to an inch here. Quickly, very quickly here. Most of that in just the last hour or so. So that kind of tells you how these tropical rains will go sometime here with those torrential downpours in these bands. And of course, that isolated tornado threat, we've already been covering that here for you today, and we're going to continue to do that, of course, providing you that latest information here indeed. As we look at that storm surge threat, now that's going to come a little bit later because of that wind direction. We're going to have to watch to see how that sets up. But as the last check, that storm surge warning extended from Bonita Beach to the Isilla River, 3 to 5 feet of storm surge there. Lesser threats off toward the west, and then we have some other alerts in play. I'll go ahead and kind of look here at some of my notes. In fact, storm surge watch west of the Isilla to the Aglockney River. That does remain in effect there. And then just not a good day to be on the water. And then here's that path here of the winds. You kind of see the worst of these off toward the Swanee River Valley and maybe even in toward that Big Bend. As I've been talking about a little bit of a western nudge here and things. So just charging up those devices is important as we're seeing some more power outages in play. As still, I'm keeping these numbers even though this got downgraded to a tropical storm. We're not going to really change the numbers for now here on our forecast unless we really see something. At this point, just kind of want to stick with what we have in the forecast. Gust here at about 65 miles an hour around Gainesville at peak to 75 in the coastal areas. And again, we've already gotten some pretty high readings. I'm going to check to see if we have anything new out of Cedar Key, in fact. Trying to check to see what's going on here, checking some different things as we're, of course, on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube here this morning. Cedar Key fire and rescue camera, 57 mile an hour gust here at last check there towards Cedar Key. That pressure, 1,009 millibars it looks like, and falling in toward that region, 57 miles an hour now. So kind of get the idea. The rain may not be adding up quite right on that, but I haven't really checked the rainfall rates in that area. But I would assume we've got more rain there than we have over here. But right now it's only showing about a quarter inch. But sometimes in these tropical rains, it's kind of hard to figure out exactly where the rain's going to be falling so quickly because you're just not expecting it to fall as quickly as it actually does here in some of these downpours because these are rates you're accustomed to seeing really. As we're looking here. More of our modes, looking at power outage information right now. Power outage numbered only about 10,000, but let's go ahead and pop this up on the screen here. We'll go ahead and show you this, give you this heads up. You do see about 10,037 customers in the dark. Levy, not many. I'm surprised that's that low, maybe a little higher. Gilchrist, 262 customers, 373 in Columbia, 111 in Bradford, actually. So that accident just moving through knocked out a few people, maybe. It looks like hopefully we can kind of get that back on, but sometimes it's too dangerous for the crews to be out there to restore that power, so got to really be kind of mindful of that, unfortunately, here, but we're going to have to see how things go because, again, conditions are going to keep deteriorating for most of us here as we're looking ahead in toward that timeline as we track Elsa. So, again, there's your power outage information. Let's go back on over now toward the graphics. You do see here some information we're seeing here. Off toward Stark, maybe a gust to 60 possible. That flooding threat here as well. Some river and creek issues possible. We're going to watch the Santa Fe riverfront. It's also some of those vulnerable areas toward Jacksonville. Of course, we have Black Creek, McCoy's Creek there. Those areas traditionally flood when you get a lot of rain. Flood watch for much of the area, but not for Tallahassee, where they're not expecting too much rain at all. Pretty big threat, though, as we've been alerting you guys here. We went up on these numbers talking about how things were going yesterday, and up to about 7 in the coastal spots here toward areas around Dixie, also Levy County, even Taylor County watching this threat as well, and then, of course, Gainesville. Going to be watching these conditions deteriorate throughout the day. We're going to wait for the updates here to come in from the Hurricane Center and be back in just a few minutes. So stick with me, giving you a look outside once again here in Bradford County, watching things very carefully here on this Wednesday morning on this 7th day of July 2021. We see that viewpoint here is that heavy band moving through dark area, some of the heavier rain, and then you see the core though of the system that's getting closer to the coast here. As we're continuing to track things, I'll be back here in about 4 minutes with more information. Meteorologist Casey Cloud back here at the top of the hour, continuing to track Tropical Storm Elsa. We just got the 8 a.m. update in from the National Hurricane Center, and the max sustained wind still the same there. That's good news, not increasing, but the pressure has fallen there, so a sign of strengthening in the overall scenario. We had that weakening overnight. Now we're back down from about 1,004 millibars to 999 millibars in that intermediate update. So watching that carefully as this storm does approach the Gulf Coast there, the northern Florida Gulf Coast, that is. Checking the information here from the Weather Service, they're talking about some areas being discontinued with the tropical storm and storm surge warning to the south, but still keeping coastal parts of Dixie, Levy, Citrus under the hurricane warning here. I'm going to be watching this threat here very carefully, obviously, as the storm does get closer. Gusts there recently to 51 in Cedar Key, but we've seen even higher than that. In terms of the numbers, maybe not becoming a hurricane, but they're on the side of caution with the hurricane warning, as this storm is about 35 miles west of Cedar Key, or 115 miles northwest of Tampa here. So just giving you that latest update from the National Hurricane Center there in Miami. You see this storm, you see the center, maybe not, maybe not. Haven't really had too much time with all these tornado warnings to kind of go through some different shots, but we'll pull up satellite real quick. It might kind of cut us out a bit. But you kind of get the idea here. You see this thunderstorm accent kind of blowing on up. And in fact, I'll go over to the meso satellite. I think that would be a little bit better viewpoint here. We'll pop that up to kind of give you an idea of what's going on here. As you kind of see some of this accent, pretty robust looking. It was more disorganized earlier here as we were kind of tracking things. And see, tornado watch to the south's been expired now. We were kind of talking about a new tornado watch, something that I've been tracking that tornado threat. I haven't had any reports so far that I'm aware of any tornado damage, so that's good, obviously. But we'll be watching things very carefully here in the Weather Center with the tornado threat. You see that extending from about Suwannee, Columbia, Union, Bradford, Clay, St. John's northward. Still could have something pop up outside of this, though, not out of the question, but that's where the greatest concern seems to be generally, that we have some tornado parameters up toward the west, so we'll just have to kind of see how things go. But different parameters, different things kind of come together for this tornadic potential. So we have to watch here with Elsa. No active tornado warnings. Haven't had any about 30 minutes or so, which is good, obviously. But we're tracking things here carefully. We're at 8:02 right now. We're going to do an update every half hour. We're able to get in that mode right now. But going longer form as necessary. We'll go to maybe a 5-minute break at points here as needed. 2.5-minute break like we did during some of that tornado coverage here as necessary. So that's something to kind of be on the lookout for here this morning as the storm does get closer toward the coast. We've been busy, though, tracking tornado warnings here in the Weather Center since about 4. I mean, just trying to get things together here for this system. Luckily, we haven't seen too many power outages reported into what I've seen. I think there might be a few more just based on some of those reports that are down toward Levy County. But we'll just kind of have to wait and see here as we continue to track what's a 65-mile-an-hour tropical storm. That center of circulation, as we talked about there, about 35 miles from Cedar Key, give or take. And we're kind of watching things carefully as I measure things out. Not quite seeing that exactly here, so I'm kind of curious on exactly where they have this plotted. So let me go ahead and check our numbers real quick. 29.2, 83.6. So 29.2. We're going to check this real quick. 29.2, 83.6. So they're going to be looking here to see exactly where they have this center of circulation this morning. So kind of maybe a little bit displaced, not exactly sure from what we're seeing here. Maybe more of a dry slot on some of our imagery here at this point. It's kind of hard to say for sure. I'll try to evaluate this a little bit more. Check our measure overlay, in fact, and yeah, maybe off to the west a little bit with that center circulation versus what maybe it kind of looks like on radar. But we're tracking things very carefully for you. Checking some different radar vantage points for sure. Still, we know some of the stronger winds in Dixie County right now. I'm going between some different tools that we have here. We're trying to give you the best angles possible on this storm system. Let's go ahead now and pop up our other vantage point here. I think Moody for now. I know Tallahassee, Moody, Jacksonville, all kind of far away, but we're just hitting the greatest spot for radar coverage. Even Tampa there, something you can use. We're getting further north, maybe of using that here at this point. So just kind of something you have to think about as we're tracking the situation. So here's another vantage point now. You see here Cedar Key. You see some lightning here in toward the Gulf of Mexico as well. That's rain, concentrated rain, adding those totals up. It's probably a little heavier than what it looks like on the radar. But that heavier band we just had to go through. We're watching for some rotation with that. Luckily, didn't see too much around Stark when it moved through Stark. We did have a tornado warning for Brooker earlier, but you do see some areas of weak rotation here along this line, close to I-10 there, and even in toward the Lardy area, a little bit of weak rotation, but we're looking off of Moody's. Let me check Jacksonville for a better look down toward the surface here to see, and we're not seeing a whole bunch. I know we were getting those tornado warnings earlier, though, for really weak spins, so we'll watch. We'll keep track of that, but I want to focus again more on the storm system itself here. We're not talking about tornado warnings just because tornado warnings take a whole bunch of your time up, and there's other areas being impacted by the storm, maybe even worse so than these concentrated areas. Sometimes the tornado warnings are a little bit more well defined and we have to focus on them, but in these situations when it's more marginal in nature, these spins, we want to focus more on the storm itself. So let's get back down toward the storm here again off of Cedar Key. Tracking things carefully with this. We're not seeing this extend into the upper levels as you saw in infrared. Not seeing as much there in terms of any empty spots here with the center of circulation or an eye, something like that. So this storm's not really well put together. It's a high-end tropical storm, 65-mile-an-hour tropical storm. We're tracking it here in the weather center. Now zoom back on out again. The tornado watch and play. You see the track. We're expecting this around 2 o'clock to be there northwest of Mayos, the worst accident on the east side, as we've been referring to here. But that landfall is going to be happening sometime this morning, it looks like, here, or maybe pretty short order as we're looking toward the Big Bend coast here. We're looking toward north central Florida, Roy, as well, with this impact. With this tropical storm. So going to take a quick break. You see some lightning even. Kind of interesting to see that. We didn't see that in the banding necessarily, but in the actual areas here in the Gulf, we saw more of that earlier, indicating maybe some intensification here, some different things trying to come together. Don't always see that, but maybe an indication of things trying to strengthen, as we did see that pressure, that central pressure there, lower down to 999 millibars in that last update. And our recon's been giving us updates as well. And looks like they did find about 1,000 millibars a little while ago as I look. These winds have been looking here, and that rains that we're pretty much seeing within the advisory, maybe a little lower because of where they're sampling, but you get the idea here. We're watching things pretty carefully in this situation. I'm going to take a break in the coverage for now, though. Don't have anything else to add at this point. We'll be back by 8:30 unless we have any new information. I know our model data here so in pretty similar scenario track on maybe the center over Taylor County here. So going to be watching that as we see the worst again to the east. Report just coming in out of Horseshoe Beach now, a gust of 42 miles an hour there. So let's pop up our other source real quick. Thought that might pop in on this here, but Dixie County, I don't think we have that on here, unfortunately. We have more just the airports on this, so we'll see these numbers go up later. This will be helpful. Some of these areas are more rural, so we have to use some different sources here. But you see the track, the expectation. You see gusts so far, 21 Cross City, 27 Gainesville. As the last few minutes, it lays 21 in Keystone. We had a gust in that 30 range earlier. We had a few power outages reported, sparse power outages in Bradford County. As you see that lightning there in the Gulf of Mexico, a little bit better on this system. So interesting to see that as we watch the system as it does move closer toward making that landfall here later this morning. We'll keep you updated. Be back at 8:30 unless we have something urgent like a tornado warning or something really in terms of a high wind gust here to tell you about. So stick with me here, keeping you safe and informed on this Wednesday morning. Meteorologist Casey Cloud back here at the bottom of the hour, continuing to watch Tropical Storm Elsa. Of course, we got that 8 a.m. update in about 30 minutes ago or so with max sustained winds at 65 miles an hour. But we're continuing to watch things, checking the chat system. Of course, trying to get that latest information in. Not too much new, but one thing that was new here a moment ago is a report there to Ward parts of Columbia County. One of those circulations we were watching earlier on. I'll go ahead and kind of back things up and point it out for you, in fact, because the icon was just on here, this report coming in around 7:25 or so, 7:30 or so, or a tree may have fell onto a house near State Road 47 and Raven Lane, and the damage may have been tornadic in nature. So getting that report in there into Ward parts of Columbia County. I'll zoom in, see what we're talking about. We'll back the radar up. I know it's going to flicker on us, but we'll kind of do this, and we'll kind of look at how things were going there in toward this region. So again, you get the idea here. Something may have evolved in toward that vicinity in Columbia County around 7:30. I do not believe at 7:30 Columbia County was actually under a tornado warning, but not exactly sure. This could have occurred earlier in the reports, just being kind of put in the system here a little bit later on. It could be from that cell that we were tracking closer toward Columbia. So that could be just a discrepancy in the time there. I'm not 100% sure on that. I have to go back and evaluate that because we did track a tornado warning circulation near Columbia earlier, and it definitely could have been that. It's just a delayed report here in the system. But we go back live, you see that pretty heavy band here in toward Baker County. Near I-10 right now, McClenny, some pretty gusty winds. We just got an update here, significant weather advisory now at 9:15 for this here, because of maybe some weak circulations trying to evolve in some gustier winds. So White Springs, Live Oak, you see Madison here, getting into some of this action now closer toward the coast. You do see our storm, maybe not quite as well defined in some ways here as we were just seeing a little bit ago. We were trying to see a little more of a wrap up, but we're looking through some different radars, kind of putting them all together on this side. So it's kind of interesting to look at some different things. We did have a gust of 42 recently. Horseshoe Beach is not all that high, but we did have gusts there in Levy County in the high 50 range, so getting pretty high there. Hopefully that's all we'll get, but a hurricane warning does remain in effect. Even though this is just a tropical storm, they wanted to err on the side of caution. It's remaining in effect for coastal Dixie, coastal Levy there, and then just out of our area, coastal Citrus as well. So watching this threat, the center might actually make landfall in Taylor County, but we'll kind of just see here some of the worst maybe on the east side with that even. But on the north side, you're going to get some in Taylor County as well, maybe a little worse than what we were thinking here yesterday. So that's something to watch out for. As I'm riding the view, you see the track here, kind of watching things go up here in toward the Big Bend region. We're keeping our eyes on this. We're keeping our eyes on so many different things in our toolkit. Do have a camera here, and this may not pop up right, but I'm going to pop it up anyway. Let's just see what happens. This popped up really good, actually. It's I-75 at US 41, 441. You see that cloudiness around, maybe some wet roads in the vicinity there. I just got to be kind of mindful of that. And then we have some other sides. Cedar Key, of course, we've been getting those really gusty winds, about 60 miles an hour reported so far. This is the WeatherStim camera there, so keeping our eyes on that, of course, this morning as we're looking toward Levy County, giving you a visual on the situation. We also got to watch out for that storm surge because of the wind direction. That's going to be coming a little bit later on here at high tide, getting that to kind of maybe combine here to cause some issues. Even though the storm's kind of passing to the north and west a little bit, that storm surge still going to funnel on in, it looks like. So the threat's not over from that standpoint. You just got to be aware of that potential as we're looking ahead here in the timeline as we continue to watch things. An update from Cedar Key there on the WeatherStim camera. Cedar Key there, that fire and rescue camera. We'll go back on over to the Doppler radar once again. You see the tornado watch, not a lot to anymore. Watching more to the north here in that band. We saw those circulations really try to fire earlier. We'll see how that happens maybe towards southeast Georgia later on. Again, maybe a quick touchdown around the city and the community of Columbia in Columbia County earlier this morning. Report of a tree down there as we've been referring to. Also getting some power outage information down to the south. I know down toward West Central Florida. Allenton report is coming in, keeping an eye there. But we do have also some other numbers. Now this It's going to be a different thing than I'm used to showing you, but it's from the state of Florida. It's the payroll information there, and I think these numbers are a little more accurate than what we've been showing you on some other sources here this morning. I'm going to double check here. Make sure we have the latest update because the numbers are a little lower on the other source that we've been showing. So let me go ahead and go over toward our system. We're going to kind of share the screen with you here and show you what's going on. It's a unique viewpoint, so just kind of bear with me. I'm going to take off our thing on the side here and just show you. Well, that's not what you wanted to see. I apologize. This is something we're not used to using here in the Weather Center, so we're just going to zoom in actually. The areas here in the yellow represent a little higher percentage of power outages. I have used this in past storms like Irma, but it's not on the air live like this. So this is a percentage of power outages. So as we get toward Dixie County, we have over 2% out and almost 5% out in Gilchrist, about 1.5% in Levy County right now. So in general, we're talking about, it looks like about 391 customer died in Levy, 242 out in Dixie, and 473 out in Gilchrist right now. So this gives you a different vantage point on this here. Trying to show you exactly what's happening here. We've had some higher outages down toward the south there in the state as well. So watching places there down toward like Hillsborough County where there's about 8,000 out or so it looks like. So we'll try to get this frame better for you next time. But just wanted to pop this on because these are a little more accurate, I think, and a little bit more representative of what we're seeing across the state. So again, watching things carefully here this morning with our tropical storm. Those winds max sustained at this 8 a.m. update, 65 miles an hour. You see this track here toward Interstate 10 later on, but you're already getting some of the nasty action. We have some of this heavier rain and wind here on the eastern periphery. We're on the northern side with that nasty band. We're looking at some of our wind gust reports over the last little bit. Let's go on over to our other source now. You'll be able to see what's happening with this track watching things toward the coast. You see 25 miles an hour recently across City Airport. Also 18 miles an hour there in towards Live Oak. 25 Keystone, 27 Gainesville. See, it's pretty high gust in Jacksonville. You can get that as we talked about before in this setup. And then I'll kind of zoom out a little more because this is the tropical storm warning area that we're talking about. Okay, they're talking about some rotation also in southwestern Baker County. Might get a tornado warning there soon. So if that happens, we'll be tracking that for you a little more comprehensively. But this is a tropical storm warning here in this maroonish color, I guess you could call it, as we're looking on over. You see that, and then the hurricane warning is in that purple area there. I think they have the tropical storm warning here too, just for if the hurricane warning were to be canceled. That's in play where my mouse is as we get toward the coast. So areas here like Horseshoe Beach under this, also down towards Swanee, Cedar Key under the hurricane warning, Inglis as well, and even Crystal River out of our area, right on the edge, Homosassa Springs. So gonna keep an eye on this situation as we go ahead and pop things back on over to our other source now, going between different radars, getting some reports in different areas. Going to check the Jacksonville radar since we're getting that information. Now, it might have a tornado warning issued pretty soon there toward a Baker. They're talking about the rotation tightening up. So they are going to issue a tornado warning. So we're giving that heads up live on the air here, folks. A tornado warning's coming for a cell north of Olustee and north of I-10. So we need to get folks into shelter there in that area. We're switching you on over to that other source now. To give you that latest information as we're getting a rotation to tighten on up, a tornado warning now until 9:15, just coming in from the weather surface at 8:38. A vigorous shower capable of producing a tornado was located 9 miles southwest of Taylor or 17 miles northeast of Lake City, moving northwest at 35 miles an hour. So there's your circulation. It's not really impressive, but it's there. We did have some reports of damage in a higher area of circulation, a higher area of shear, stronger area of shear toward parts of southern Columbia earlier, and now a tornado warning, a possible circulation there about 9 miles southwest of Taylor, and then 17 miles northeast of Lake City, moving northwest at 35 miles an hour. So I want to go ahead and get folks in the shelter. This is a really rural area, but a possible tornado here in parts of northern Florida, Well, so we're going to kind of go a little bit more long form now, taking those like 5-minute breaks, 2.5-minute breaks, something like that. And so we do have an active tornado warning in play here. The tornado watch till 1 o'clock, but now another tornado warning. It's been about an hour or so, a little over an hour since we've had a tornado warning in play. But we're back to kind of keeping an eye on these circulations again now, trying to ramp on up. So we're going to go ahead and zoom on in here. Looking here, we're switching between radars. So that's why it jumped like that. We were on Moody, trying to get an eye on the actual storm center here, but we're back to tracking these circulations because these can enhance that damage potential. Your little mini enhancement of damage here possible in these areas. I mean, these have not been that impressive today, but we just have to be mindful of them. These circulations not too impressive, but still maybe those gusts 60, 70, 80 miles an hour possible in those isolated areas. So a tornado warning now until 9:15 again, moving northwest at 35 miles an hour. So we want to go ahead and get you guys into shelter there. Baker, Columbia counties, a spin there within the Doppler radar algorithms. So keep an eye on that. While we have you here, let's go ahead, pop on up our camera outside where I'm at. We popped this up earlier. I don't hear too much right now. The wind's down to 5. We did have a gust to about 23 miles an hour out here at 8:21 in toward this dark area. So that's the highest gust we've had today. 8:21 or so, 23 miles an hour as we're kind of keeping an eye on that anemometer here, trying to give you the very latest information, obviously, on what is happening. So looking outside, you see the dark skies looking off toward the west here. Some a little bit more concentrated rain trying to move on into the picture here. We're watching things very carefully, obviously, with our tropical storm Elsa. Not a hurricane, but still some pretty nasty impacts here this morning at times. We've seen these trees blowing pretty good. Not right at this moment, though. Winds are only at 6 miles an hour, but again, continuing to watch things very carefully. Again, we have that tornado warning now in place. So let's go back up toward the north here. You do see our area, a little bit maybe of a kink within our radar echoes there, and then you can kind of see our circulation here as we're going in toward this region. Excuse me, as we're looking here. It seems we're getting down to our street level mapping, Ep Road 272. We're close enough to look for debris as well. Not seeing any though, that's the good news, but a tornado warning now for parts of Baker and Columbia at 9:15. Watching a possible tornado in this vicinity. So you want to take your tornado precautions here. Let me go back on over toward a different vantage point that we have. We've been using it. Might actually want to go to Moody, because that's going to give us a pretty good look at this as well. So it's always interesting to go between radars, and I'm not seeing too much here, but I'm going to pop it up for you guys here at home to see what is happening in this area. You do see here, as we're getting northwest of Sanderson, getting here in toward this area, some of this wind shear showing up when you have the brightness, and then the darker greens kind of showing there. You get those to come together a little bit, and that'll be a weak tornado possibly. And more of that off toward the south and east as well. It also depends on radar angles. So I'm going to be watching things very carefully as we keep reiterating that here this morning. Trying to give you the very latest information to keep you, your friends, your family safe. So just watching things here that spin. Pretty rural area overall. That's the good news. Northwest 35 mainly. Just a few sparsely populated zones. So we're going to keep tracking this here, a tornado warning till 9:15. But let's get back to the grand scheme of things again. I think we're going to reset you back on over to our other sources. We have so many tools, so we almost have to just kind of pick and choose here what to use in this type of environment. And here's our broad view. You see that spin here of our storm system as we're looking toward the Gulf of Mexico. Here you see our spin, our center trying to show one up. I'll pull up our wind arrows for us now, and you can kind of see that maybe making a landfall more toward Taylor County, which again is interesting. But some of the work still on the east side, and Tallahassee getting some of that rain, nothing really extreme, but getting a little bit of that banding there in toward Leon County this morning. Probably about an inch is what we're anticipating there. They might end up getting just a little bit more since we had that shift with that band, but it's not going to be too significant in that vicinity. So that's the good news as we go between some different things here. last hour rain, and then checking on our last 12 hours of rain. You see some of the spots that have picked up more rain down there towards South Florida, 9, 10 inches even. But these spots able to handle this a little bit better as we're looking west of Punta Gorda. But you see here in our purple, just about 2 inches or so in the last 12 hours, maybe a little more because it's going to underdo it some probably in that tropical environment. We've already got over an inch where I'm at, so I got to keep that in mind. This is probably underdoing it just a little bit here. Keeping an eye on these numbers. Not underdoing it too much, though. That's actually about right. That's good news. That's good news in terms of that. But again, we're going to keep tracking things. Tornado watching the yellow until 1 o'clock, 1 o'clock this afternoon. Probably going to go longer than that for some of us, though, as we see these conditions come together. Favorable conditions for a tornado. Speaking of that, of course, with the tornado watch, but then we also have the SPC outlook. They've actually updated this here in the last few minutes, it looks like, to kind of move up areas here more towards southeast Georgia with that threat, getting those parameters to come together. So that's good news. Bradford County, we thought we might get some more tornadic weather. We were talking about we weren't sure how things would come together, though. It looks like the tornado threat's going to come together more toward the north now. We already had our little, time frame of that, it seems. So that's some definite good news. It's more about the conditions coming together. The worst of the storm has not passed. We're going to have some more of this rain and wind coming on in, though a little off toward the west. So that helps too. But still, we have seen some nasty conditions here already, as we've been referencing. Let's go on over to our meso satellite now. Definitely seeing the storminess erupt here. Looks like a pretty nasty scenario overall, but no ice showing up luckily on infrared. That's not going to happen at this point. That's the good news. We're not going to see that pop on out on us or anything, but again, we're watching the situation. The tornado warning is till 9:15, pretty rural areas. We'll take a quick break. Be back in about 5 minutes to continue this tornado warning coverage. Back with you here in the Weather Center. That tornado warning has been canceled early by the National Weather Service in Jacksonville. Circulation weakening on out. Again, these are pretty weak and broad in nature, so that's the good news. We did have some damage though in Columbia County earlier. It's not extreme damage, but it's consistent maybe with an EF0, EF1 type scenario. It looks like we're seeing some images of that, but again, watching the situation again carefully here as we zoom back on out. We're going to keep our eyes on things here as we look toward the Big Bend coast. You see here some of the center here getting closer and closer now as we're seeing that wind, that rain in the picture overall, going between some of our different radar modes here, trying to give you the best views possible of the storm system, looking at so many different viewpoints overall. So let me go ahead and get back to the storm itself now that the tornado warning's out of the picture. We're going to try to get you to a different vantage point of the storm itself. This might be pretty good off of Moody, but let me check Tallahassee real quick to see if we have anything better here to show you. Getting some reports. Actually, getting a report in out at Tallahassee. It looks like this is near Blairstone. A tree down with a power line entanglement there. Some winds a little bit stronger there. Still not extreme, but a little bit stronger there. It looks like the strongest winds this storm has to offer, though, are headed right in toward Steinhatchee. Getting a good look at this, actually, on our Tallahassee radar now. So let me pop this up. You can see this here. These winds are really strong. I'll kind of highlight them for you. Maybe haven't really seen winds like these get on shore yet. As we're looking, maybe just starting to get on shore in some pretty sparsely populated zones. But these winds here, as we look higher up in the storm, concentrated area 50 to 60, but could even have winds stronger than this. Thought these pixels might even show up a little bit higher, but you get the idea here. We're watching things very carefully, 60 miles an hour, give or take, in this vicinity west of Horseshoe Beach. Go ahead and zoom back on out a little bit. I think we might be talking about gusts even higher than that, but you get the idea. It's showing up pretty well defined at least. We'll go back to Moody. You can kind of see that as well here as we zoom back into this area. Horseshoe Beach getting some of these winds. Report at 8 o'clock there with a gust of 42 at WeatherStem. Be interesting to check that WeatherStem site again. So we'll be kind of keeping our eyes on that. In fact, what I'll do here is 8:55 right now, since we're on the active tornado warning. We'll just go off to about 9 o'clock or so as we go ahead and put me back on camera now. Watching things. I'll check that WeatherStem site, see if we can give you some more information there. And be you back here in about 5 minutes as we continue to track our tropical storm Elsa. Max sustained winds about 65 miles an hour, getting pretty close to landfall here in northern Florida. Back here in the Weather Center at the top of the hour, watching some weak rotation as the Weather Service in Jacksonville now on a sail southwest of Waycross. So we're going to keep an eye on that situation there toward Ware County. See that kind of discreet actually here as we're just kind of looking at the broad view. So something to watch out for as we're looking toward the north. There's a tornado watch in play until about 1 o'clock this afternoon. So we'll definitely keep our eyes peeled to that as we go ahead and see the storm system getting some of the worst of the storm now over land toward that area around Horseshoe Beach and just to the north even with some of this storminess just recently to 34 at Horseshoe Beach, so even some of this might be kind of moving past them in some regard, but we're going to go ahead and get our camera ready to go from there and pop that on in just a moment. I have to kind of load this in here, so give me just a second. I'm going to go ahead and kind of paste in our other shot here if we can and see what we can do with this so you guys know what's happening out there toward that area. So gust to 34 and just a recent reading to 32 miles an hour there. So let me go ahead and show you that right now. You do see here that shot of what's going on there in parts of Dixie County. Pretty nasty weather situation overall, maybe not extreme. That's the good news, not an extreme situation, but still pretty nasty in general as we continue to check our different sources for the latest updates. Again, I look into ward parts of Dixie County at Elsa here this morning, trying to give you the very latest on this system as it gets closer to landfall here in that Dixie, Taylor County zone. Somewhere, one of those counties is going to make landfall. That's a certainty at this point, I think. You can kind of just see that within some of our echoes here. It's not going to make landfall in Jefferson, and at this point, not going to make landfall in Levy County either, but that surge threat's still going to be a factor as we're looking towards Cedar Key, maybe an increasing factor here as we've been talking about. Let's go ahead and put on our overlay. You see this wind direction right now. We're going to have to watch to see this kind of how it switches over. I'm going to point this out for you, actually. So we're seeing it kind of in this direction here and then kind of curve off. But once it's kind of moves on shore, we're going to have more of a pushing that surge there in and maybe coinciding with the high tide. That can be problematic. So we got to be watching in Cedar Key at 3 to 5 feet. Storm surge possible. Getting a report into word Dixie County here. Tree branches down. Community of Swanee, though, there may be a discrepancy there. But some tree branches down somewhere toward the Swanee River Valley, as you would anticipate. And then also report just a little while ago on I-10 of a tree down there. So causing some issues in the ward out region. Seeing some of that information cross the wires as well. So seeing that information actually they're reported by Axa News Jack. So I'm going to continue to watch this situation. You zoom on out a little bit more. As you see our storm system, you see that track a little further to the west here. That could be a little bit worse off towards some spots here as we're looking more toward the Swanee River Valley. Maybe not quite as bad of a threat here as we're getting toward maybe in Bradford, Alachua, but we'll just have to wait and see how things go because this storm will kind of spread apart. It's a tropical storm, so a little bit more disorganized. So that can kind of lead to things being a little bit more impactful in some spots at least than maybe where you would expect them to be because of that disorganization. Checking on some more information. Not seeing any gusts really too high on our grand scheme. Actually, Jackson will get some of the higher gusts. One reason didn't really want to pull down the wind gusts too high there, even though they're not under a tropical storm alert. Just kind of the nature of things here can lead to the numbers getting higher into Ward Duval County than in other spots. You see 32 on the south side of Jacksonville right now. 28 Gainesville, 25 Keystone, so a little bit lower than what we were thinking maybe, which obviously is great news. As I'm looking here, 6 miles an hour is what I'm getting right now. So that means that power outage threat lower than maybe what we were thinking because the storm's not a hurricane, not as organized, no eye wall here necessarily. I had one last night. It was a hurricane last night. It was organized there. At least it was classified as one there at one point. There is some speculation that maybe wasn't actually a hurricane. We'll just have to wait and see in the post-analysis here. But again, watching things as we go back on over. This is that tornado warning earlier. We had that pulled on up. Of course, that's been let go. So let's go ahead and go back on over to our other sources now. Our other sources we have at our disposal. Let's pop up the UF Weather Sim camera, Gainesville. See that? We haven't shown you this shot yet. and it's pretty stormy there. So that kind of giving you an idea of what's going on in the ward parts of Alachua County right now. You see that storminess, you see that just nastiness. You have classes there canceled for today, in-person classes, Santa Fe as well, as you're still watching the storminess come into the picture here. Definitely watching things and giving you the latest updates. We'll now go back on over toward our viewpoint of the scene of the scenario here, and let me go back on over. I think we have it where we can pull up our other source now. So let me go ahead and try to do this here. Try to do it earlier, and we're going to try to pull this up now. Our grand scheme of things, look at those power outages, and you can see what we're talking about actually with this. This is our other source here to be able to see the whole screen all together from the State Emergency Management here, State of Florida. Giving you an idea of what's going on here. You see not many outages percentage-wise is how we're looking here, except for Gilchrist, about 5%. You see about a 1.5% Dixie-Levy, so that's not bad at all. We've had some numbers toward Hillsborough higher, but a percentage-wise number isn't too bad. You kind of see that here on the side of the screen, about 5,000 customers. As conditions improve there, the number will go down into that vicinity. So just trying to give you an idea of what is going on there down toward the south. Again, giving you a different viewpoint of this, so that's why we're kind of sharing the screen. I didn't have that framed up, so we just wanted to kind of give you an idea there, at least on this, how this is going. As we go back on the camera now, again, our tropical storm close to making landfall. In fact, let me check to make sure we don't have anything new from the Hurricane Center. I don't think we would yet, but it's just it's important to kind of keep an eye on things, because you never know. We can get these update statements to come across, and not seeing anything new at this point, so that's good news, I guess, in some ways. I mean, we could have just make landfall, but good news in that we're not seeing any intensification or anything like that, at least here with this scenario this morning. Again, landfall pretty soon. Let me switch this over so we don't have that old viewpoint in there. Kind of switch between computers for a second, but I at least give you the live viewpoint. We have so many sources sometimes that likes to take our old images. But you see that rain kind of getting heavier now into view here. This is something to watch out for. See some higher wind, maybe toward Allen, looking higher up too, but something to watch out for here overall with some heavier wind and rain. Tropical storm warnings remain in effect. You wouldn't get like a thunderstorm warning in this situation, because essentially you're already under a warning, but you will get tornado warnings here in these situations. So you have to be kind of cognizant of that. Potential these spins that we've been tracking. You see these areas of spin right near the state line, and then we had some rotation near Waycross here as we're watching things. You see that broad nature maybe a little tighter a moment ago when they were talking about it, though, not far from Manners. So watching for that. Watching here the storm system again, our tropical storm Elsa, close to making landfall. You see some of these worst impacts toward Dixie-Levy, Taylor counties here, the Big Bend coast. Watching North Central Florida for you. Seeing more information come on in. Going to be watching these winds. Let me see some of our other graphics we have. I know we put some of these together, and I'll pull up rainfall. The wind numbers, I'm not sure. At this point, I'm thinking less and less likely that they're going to verify in some of our spots here. And hopefully we don't get 65 Gainesville, 75 at the coast here at this point. But let's go to the rain numbers here. Let's go over toward our rain numbers in our forecast that we've been talking about. Some river and creek flooding, 3 to 5 inches. Gainesville, Jacksonville, Valdosta, still possible. Total here oscillated up to 8. Brunswick as well, less toward Palm Coast, even less toward Tallahassee generally here in this scenario. And we're going to watch even some moisture hanging around in the very early tomorrow, as well as the storms going up there, moving away toward the north. So watching that. Let's pop up another camera we have now. Bradford Sheriff's Office viewpoint weather stem. To be able to see what's happening here. And we'll be able to kind of give you an idea of what's going on there. Just again, pretty similar look at things, honestly. Where I'm at, 9 miles an hour, gust right here, and 23 at the peak, so it's not too bad. We've had higher before, so far definitely could get higher though. We talked about that peak of the worst conditions still around the lunch hour, give or take. Still anticipating that. Don't want to change that forecast here That's an active situation, so ultimately things could change a little around. But when we're in live coverage here, just kind of looking at the models, it seems like we're pretty much in line for that here. But we have seen a tornado threat and the ultimate parameters kind of sit north in that scenario, but that's in a different part of the storm sometimes. So still have the storm here. We're a little bit further away than we thought we would be, so that reduces that wind threat some, but still going to be watching here carefully as we're keeping an eye on things getting closer to landfall, and at least the storm at that point will start to weaken down some. That'll be the good news, but expecting to hold together a little bit further as we're looking even toward the Carolinas. There's some alerts up to Virginia even as we're watching there, so something they'll be paying attention to in the coming hours and days. But as we go back on over now toward our radar, our velocity, you'll be able to see here our storm system, Dixie County, getting close to landfall here, I think. Looking at Tallahassee radar, some of these stronger winds now. Roy coming on shore here. It looks like around Horseshoe Beach and Steinhatchee. Let me check our Horseshoe Beach source here. Try to say that kind of fast. You know how that is. Sometimes trying to say that too quick, but 37 mile an hour, 38 mile an hour gust now on that. So let me go back over there, see how it looks outside, giving you an idea of what's going on. You see that rain on the camera lens, 38 mile an hour winds there, Horseshoe Beach. You get the idea of what's happening. It's pretty nasty. You see that rain there. You see the nastiness that's ongoing. Let me go back away from that though for the time being. We'll switch you back over toward another source that we have, and that is our own camera here. We have this. They give you that live imagery. It's so helpful in these situations. So let's go over there. You're able to see, look outside. You see that rain falling right where I'm at in the word dark. You see the clouds and nothing too robust. The trees aren't moving too much. So that's the good news at least. Here in toward Bradford County, we're going to watch to see how things kind of can pick on up here at times with Elsa, with the storminess. We'll go ahead and take a break though in the coverage for now as we're watching some of the stronger wind again. Some of the stronger wind there moving on in toward the Horseshoe Beach area as we've been referencing. Steinhatchee, this is your heads up. Some of the worst that Elsa has to offer anywhere is about to be moving in towards Steinhatchee. Let me say that again. The worst that Elsa has to offer, pretty much the worst of it, about to be moving in towards Steinhatchee here across city as well. So be ready for some of these stronger winds here, maybe on the order of 60, 70 miles an hour in those gusts, and be moving on in here toward that area. We'll be back by about 9:30 with more information. Meteorologist Casey Cloud back here in the Weather Center at the bottom of the hour, continuing to watch Tropical Storm Elsa's impact. Looking towards dark right now. You see some of that rain here falling, not too nasty out there. Wind only at 3-4 miles an hour at this point, so that's some good news. But let's go ahead and pop up our graphics. I do have some things put together from a little while ago to see how Elsa's been impacting this dark area. This is through about 9:25 this morning. We had our heaviest rain at 7:42, but 1.23 inches has fallen here today. 23-mile-an-hour gusts is the highest we've seen so far. That was at 8:21, and that lowest pressure has not been impressive at all so far either. 1,014 millibars at 7:09. Right now we're sitting at about 1,015 millibars, so not seeing things that bad here in terms of being that close to the center, so that's the good news. But we have seen some nasty weather towards Cedar Casey and some things, maybe an attempt at an eye wall there impacting that region with some nasty wind and rain with some of the worst of the conditions. So let's go ahead and go back on over toward our Doppler radar. We have the Jacksonville site up right now. I'm switching between some different sources here. As you can kind of see this here toward the Gulf Coast. Dixie County getting a lot of the worst of this here, and we have other radars that'll give you a better vantage point of this as it gets close and probably is making landfall right around Cross City right now. We have Tallahassee's radar, we have the Moody radar. So in terms of the Tallahassee radar, we're about 7,000 feet up on this. Now as we go toward the Moody radar, let me switch you on over there. We're behind the scenes at least, and we're getting maybe a little higher. So let's go up toward the Tallahassee radar then, because that looks like it'll give us the best viewpoint of this situation. It just kind of depends on exactly where you're at, hitting the radar here, giving you that different perspective on this Wednesday morning. We're seeing some of that worst of the weather moving toward Cross City right now. Should have some observations coming out of that area. So this is the time to be hunkered down if you're in Cross City. Definitely don't want to be out and about at this point. Might go ahead and stick with it for a few minutes actually, since we're seeing what we are out toward that Cross City area. As here's that viewpoint that I was talking about off the Tallahassee radar. Pretty much seeing landfall right now here along the Gulf Coast. You can see this here, Horseshoe Beach, Steenhatchee, Cross City getting in some of the worst. I know the radar is still kind of far away, but some of the worst of the wind right in this vicinity, right about here, and it probably extends over to even as we're kind of not able to see some of that underneath here as the radar are not able to get that far in some ways. Having some of that rains folding, for instance, they're getting that purple, but again, you do see here some of that heaviest of the wind right now in toward parts of Dixie County. So this is your storm, and the worst of the storm for you guys right now, probably. Maybe some surge later that could be worse, but in terms of the heaviest of the rain and the gustiest winds, it's excuse me, it's about Steenhatchee, it's about Cross City, it's about areas there toward Dixie County, even a little bit of Taylor County in here as well, but you get the idea here. Our tropical storm making landfall right about now. We'll go ahead and pop back to a different viewpoint as I'm seeing reports now. Person who lives on the Steenhatchee River, no flooding as of yet, but 2 inches of rain has occurred there. So just trying to give you some of the different reports. We'll go back over to our other system right now. Our tropical storm pretty much making landfall at this moment. Trying to have an organizational structure a little bit better here. Seeing that landfall in that Dixie County area. So just got to be mindful of that here. Again, been tracking Elsa for about a week or so, keeping you out ahead of the storm. We talked about this threat middle of last week, give you the heads up, and now Elsa's landfall is about to happen right now on the Gulf Coast. You see things updating here, getting the latest information, and we just got some information in from the hurricane hunters, in fact. So let me go ahead and check some of that out here as we're switching between some more things here behind the scenes. Again, just seeing some different things come on in here, folks. I know just you can kind of see some different flashes because we're trying to give you the very latest here on what's is going on here with this scenario with Elsa again about to make a landfall. Trying to keep you, your friends, your family safe here. Just want to be inside. And probably in Dixie County, you want to be away from windows right now, even in toward that vicinity. But the recon information Seeing the numbers not all that impressive where they're looking, but they're not wanting to get on land maybe with some of that stuff. We'll see. They're getting some new information uh, to us right about now. This is 47 knots, 48 knots, so getting right there in the Gulf of Mexico just a little bit, but tracking some different things. Let's go back on over toward the Tallahassee radar now. I'll go ahead and do that here. You'll be able to see some of these winds, in fact, as we pop this on. Right there in Cross City area, these winds maybe in that 60-mile-an-hour range, 70-mile-an-hour range, not out of the question. As we're looking there toward street level mapping now, tornado warning coming for a cell southeast of Hoboken. So we're about to get that here, folks. So we're about to get that to pop up. We'll go over to that here in a moment. It's a situation we have to kind of switch between some different things, but a nasty tropical storm with some more tornado warnings. But you see southwest 155th Avenue here, southwest 195th Avenue. Some of the stronger winds right now in Dixie County. This storm is making landfall here. These winds moving on in. Elsa's making its landfall here in northern Florida. Looks like toward the Dixie County, maybe Taylor County line. But you see the worst of this storm system, the worst that Elsa has to offer here in this vicinity. We'll be getting official word in a little bit on that landfall. Different perspectives give us different looks, actually. Kind of interesting because in some ways it looks like we're just getting the worst of the storm on land, but the actual center might still be kind of off. It's based on the different perspectives. But we do have now a tornado warning for the Hoboken area that's going to be issued. So let me get this popped on up. We have some areas of circulation on our sources. Let me go over toward radar scope. We would have kind of scoped this out, I guess you could say, as we look on in here. We're looking at some of these different cells. You see one area off toward the west here away across, but the area that the tornado warning's been issued for is around Hoboken. Not as impressive, actually, which is interesting. Maybe a circulation here 9 miles southwest of Nahana. But we're going to watch that. Let's trade the Jackson radar. Maybe it's a better perspective over there as we're trying to analyze things on the fly here. You're not seeing too much over there either, but a tornado warning, maybe something right in there. That polygon should just be coming. So let me go ahead and give you that polygon until 10 a.m. By the way, go ahead and take shelter. If you're in Brantley, Pierce, Ware counties, parts of those counties here, let's go ahead and pop away from radar scope. We'll go back on over to our big board here and then go in towards South Georgia so we can break down that tornado warning polygon for you guys. A possible tornado here southeast of Hoboken. This is moving off toward northwest there at about 25 miles an hour. Vigorous shower, not really getting any lightning with it. But a tornado warning for parts of Brantley, Pearson, Ware, so the Hoboken area now under a tornado warning. Of course, we have that tornado watch going until 1 o'clock this afternoon, but a possible tornadic circulation within this here, tracking on off toward the northwest at about 25 miles an hour. So go ahead and take those tornado precautions here. If you're around parts of Pierce, Brantley, Ware counties, we're going to be tracking this potential here over the next little bit of one of these areas within Elsa, possibly producing a tornado as we go back to Elsa itself, trying to get the latest information as the storm making landfall here in Dixie County, really the worst of it. You see around Cross City, Horseshoe Beach, and in fact, let's check some of these observations here. Should be getting some gust in. Only 25 so far in Cross City. I think that'll go up though. That's in from just a few minutes ago. I'm surprised by that. That's on the official sensor there. Seeing some higher gusts in other spots, but that should go up there, I would suspect, in just the next little bit as we look at things. In fact, let's go ahead and pop this up real quick. It'll see the tropical storm warning area, the hurricane warning area as well. So you kind of get an idea of what's going on here this morning as we continue to check in with the latest updates here on everything that's happening. Again, you see 25 off toward Cross City, 21 Perry, but we have had higher wind observations, quite a bit higher wind observations in between here. And then there's your tornado warning. You see that within the tropical storm warning in the maroon, the tropical storm conditions ongoing here. For many of us, some of us will still see deteriorating conditions, maybe towards southeast Georgia later on. As we're talking though, right now though, a tornado warning's in play again around Hoboken. So you want to go ahead and be taking those tornado precautions there. You see our grand scheme of things with the storm system. The worst there toward Taylor, Dixie, and Levy counties. Right now, we've been talking about it, giving you the latest. We'll continue to give you the latest here on this situation as our storm approaches the coast, making landfall pretty soon. We'll be back in about 5 minutes with more details here. Let's go ahead and kind of leave you with another look here at our area view with Tropical Storm Elsa here. Let's make sure we haven't got any new updates from the Hurricane Center real quick before I take this 5-minute break. Nothing new yet, but we're going to have that official landfall pretty soon. It may just wait till 11. We'll see with the full update, but they could go ahead and call this earlier if they see that it's actually making landfall. But we have seen some things with the center kind of being a little behind, so we'll see. But the worst is coming ashore right now. Meteorologist Casey Cloud back with you here about 9:46, continuing our coverage. Tornado warning still continues until 10 a.m. for parts of Brantley, Pearson, Winter, and South Georgia. And we just got a flash flood warning now because of very high rainfall right here toward Dixie and Taylor County. That's our first flash flood warning here from this system as we're looking toward our area. And you do see northwestern Dixie, southeastern Taylor until 1:45. Doppler radar indicating thunderstorms here, or at least acts, and maybe not thunderstorms, but some heavy rainfall producing storminess that's given them about, it looks like 2.5 inches of rain in the last hour, and additional amounts of 2 to 4 inches possible in the warned areas. So the flash flooding is already occurring. Steinhatchee, Cross City, Horseshoe Point, Horseshoe Beach as well. It looks like as Jonesboro, Shamrock, Clara, all under this. So a flash flood warning now until it looks like about 1:45 for parts of Dixie and Taylor counties here in the Big Bend of Florida. Going off here, you see again the storm making landfall pretty much, and then our storminess in Georgia, though, getting some of this accent kind of in between. As we go ahead and give you a look here at the satellite now, I want to go ahead and pop that on for everybody at home. Haven't shown this to you in a while. It's pretty impressive looking with the accent, with the storminess around here with Elsa's, but it doesn't look like it's going to become a hurricane. There's still a hurricane warning though in play for parts of Dixie, Levy, Citrus counties. We'll be watching here to see how things go in this overall scenario as we move between some of our different parameters here. Continuing to track things for sure. We're going to go ahead and pop on our velocity mode as we get toward Dixie County. We're really seeing some high velocity values now in Dixie, so I'm really interested to kind of see here what could end up happening with some of our numbers toward the Cross City Airport here in future updates. But let's pop this up for everybody at home now. Let's see what I'm talking about. These are some really strong winds. Some of the stronger winds that I've seen on radar access, maybe in that 75-mile-an-hour range here as we're looking just to the southeast of Steinhatchee. We're looking higher up, so keep that in mind. So maybe not all reaching the surface, but that's some really impressive wind here. Right around, it looks like southwest 661st Street here. Some very strong winds in Dixie County right now, causing some issues. Southwest 533rd Street as well. So the worst of the winds right there in Dixie County. Zoom back in again to that street level mapping so you guys know what's going on here. Trying to give you the latest information on what's happening with our tropical storms. So again, it's making landfall about right now here. You see these winds very strong in this area. Very nasty wind moving there in regions around Cross City, maybe just over there toward the west of Cross City in between. Going to be getting some of the worst of the wind here. It just kind of depends on exactly what's reaching the surface. But I know we've been watching some of the different viewpoints here out of this area, and we'll continue to do that, keeping you up to date. We're back in another 5 minutes with more information, so stay tuned. Back with you in the Weather Center, getting that latest radar scan in now off the Tallahassee site. You can see some pretty strong winds here in Dixie County. Storm pretty close to landfall. Now that circulation really maybe just over the water. Kind of been watching that. We've been talking about that, even though the worst of the weather is happening now because of the storm being just so discombobulated here. As you're kind of seeing things really be nasty around Steinhatchee right now. Very strong winds in that 70-mile-an-hour range, give or take possible. These are winds just above the surface as we're looking here. So not necessarily getting this all down to the ground, to 7,000 feet. So, I mean, obviously, not all of this is going to translate, but you get the idea here. We're trying to give you a look at things here the best we can based on the radars that are in play. As we did just get a report, the Horseshoe Beach weather stem gusted to 47 miles an hour. So that information is coming in here with some of these stronger winds in the region. So again, the worst of the weather right now in Dixie County, a little bit of Taylor County there. Going to be moving on up here. It looks like into parts of eastern Taylor, also in toward Lafayette County, even parts of Madison County later on as well. Going to be watching this as well as Suwannee County. So I'm going to be tracking this potential, obviously, here with the core of this system, the worst that Elsa has to offer here. Again, velocity kind of tells that story. So watching this, we're also watching the tornado warning in South Georgia. It's still in effect. So let me go ahead and give you an update on that. We're focusing on the storm system itself. We still have a tornado warning. So let me go ahead and show you what's happening over there, as this will kind of give you an idea of what's going on here as we get over, we switch between one source here, go over now toward another, and you can see here our center of spin here. This is near 301, and you can see that it's actually outside the tornado warning, the higher area of spin at this point, it looks like. So that's something to kind of be mindful of. Maybe the new tornado warning here off toward the east a little, or pretty similar spot. The tornado warning for Hoboken, though. Probably some weak rotation in there still to keep that going, but again, watching things carefully, giving you the latest updates, of course, here in the Weather Center. We'll go back down to the south now, give you the latest look at things here as we get down toward the coast. You can see here these strong winds off of Moody. Some of these may not reaching the surface as we look further off toward the east. We're not exactly sure, but maybe not quite as strong winds as this is showing over toward Archer. Again, looking a little bit further up into the atmosphere off of this radar versus the Tallahassee radar as we were measuring that a moment ago for you guys. But our storm system bringing the worst of the impacts right now here along the Gulf Coast. Again, Steinhatchee here, looking on the Tallahassee site now, showing some of this wind threat toward this area. That's a really strong pixel showing up there, getting in toward that 76-mile-an-hour range toward that region. So again, continuing to watch things. That tornado warning in Georgia as well, but these winds maybe even higher than what you would get during a tornado. It'll be close, actually. And a weaker type tornado here, like what we might be seeing up toward the north. So, got to be mindful. I'm sure these power outage numbers are going up, so let me go ahead and check on that. We'll pop me back on the camera here, and I'll go ahead and look at some of our resources behind the scenes. Our power outage dashboard, showing some of those, maybe not quite as many as I would think. Let me check a different source. We have quite a few different sources for power outages. This is a rural area, so sometimes we don't get as good information down here for these details, digital information, but you get numbers that are showing pretty low right now. I have to believe they're a little bit higher unless the power grid's really holding up good toward Dixie County. These numbers are way outdated, I think, but what I'm seeing, so I don't know if I even want to report them here at this point. Let me go ahead and see if we have anything new. I'll go ahead and kind of refresh some things to see if anything new's coming in here to the Weather Center. So let me go ahead and kind of check on that. I know you see a little bit of light from here and there popping on up on the screen on me because we're just trying to go between so many different sources, but a little bit extra light. But we'll go ahead and try to see if we have anything new. Checking things out here. Trying to get down here toward the Gulf Coast. The numbers are way outdated, so I gotta believe that we're seeing higher numbers than what we were talking about earlier. Let's go back on over to some other resources. Back to radar scope we go. You see some lightning popping up even in this vicinity. getting an idea of what's going on here toward the Gulf Coast, toward this region with some pretty nasty weather. Steinhatchee getting hammered right now, probably the worst that our system has to offer, moving right into ward and through that area as we speak. Steinhatchee, Dixie County, also parts of Taylor County with this threat as well. So flash flood warning in that region. We have the threat, of course, for that storm surge that we've talked about. Still got to watch some of that potential to increase there with the wind direction and play we've been talking about here. We also have that threat, the hurricane gust, a hurricane warning for coastal Dixie, Levy, Citrus. I'm looking probably more up toward the north here, not really Citrus. Citrus, not even in our area, but we're going to talk about that just to give you the full breadth of the situation. And of course, the tornado threat, like we've been talking about, we had that tornado warning there over South Georgia at 10 o'clock, so that's gone away now. That's the good news, but we'll see if anything kind of ramps up on us as we continue to watch Steinhatchee here, the Gulf Coast of Florida, getting some of the worst of this storm. Going to be checking for that official landfall. Again, I mentioned this and wanted to just preface it. I mean, when I talk about landfall, the official landfall is still going to be a little bit, might be in that 11 o'clock update with the actual center because it's displaced here. But the worst of the storm is happening right now. So in terms of the wind, the rain, that's happening at this very moment here. So I just kind of want to clarify that. If this is a stronger system, more organized system, you'd have an eye wall kind of wrapping things around. But right now, even though it's landfall, not really necessarily happening right this second, we're talking about the worst of the storm has to offer. Moving through some of these spots here in Dixie County, just re-emphasizing this here, showing up really well on the radars. Torrential downpours, very high winds moving through. We'll keep you updated, be breaking in as necessary. That tornado warning gone, so we'll come back at 10:30 unless we need to break back in sooner for something more imminent. We may break back in if we see something really pop up there even more around Steinhatchee or get some word about an official landfall here because that flooding potential here too going to be adding on up, so we have to keep that in mind. Last hour or so off of the Tallahassee radar, I've seen rates there 3 inches an hour maybe in towards southern Taylor County, so we're watching that. Let's go back over toward our other viewpoint. You can see our storm total amounts here getting up toward 5-6 inches now. So just watching this very carefully as it does impact the Gulf Coast. We're tracking Elsa for you. We're back at 10:30, but maybe even sooner if it's necessary. Meteorologist Casey Cloud back here in the Weather Center at the bottom of the hour, continuing our coverage on Tropical Storm Elsa. The worst of the impacts there toward parts of Taylor, Dixie County right now, and that's going to be the worst of the acts in there that they're going to see, Roy, as we're looking toward areas like Steinhatchee there in terms of the rain and the wind. That's starting to move up more toward the north, but still that storm surge threat. We'll watch for that with the wind direction, as we've been referencing here and watching for that around Cedar Key as well, with the wind kind of pushing on up in toward that area. And then as we look toward the north here, as we're getting some new information, and I'll go over that here in a second, but as we look toward the north here, toward parts of Lafayette County, you see this accent pushing on in there. I'll kind of point it out for you, actually. I'll move over and we'll kind of talk about what's going on here. So this is kind of moving on up here in toward parts of Lafayette County. So just be mindful, maybe some power outages, charge those devices if you haven't already, as we're looking there toward the Swanee River Valley, because it looks like some of the worst of the winds going to moving in there. That's where you have your higher power outage potential as we're looking toward Mayo over the next little bit, as the worst that Elsa has to offer is moving on in. And you heard that beep, and that's actually, looks like they've gone ahead and gone with an EF0 tornado, having touched down there toward parts of Columbia County and the community of Columbia around 7:30, it looks like there, where a tree fell into a home near State Road 47 and Raven. So just kind of get an idea of some of that damage there. Looking like an EF0 did cause that there. We were talking about EF0s potentially occurring in that region there earlier, that type of threat. So seeing some other information come in. I know we've had some gusts. We haven't had gusts like what we saw down toward Key West yet, though. In toward our region, we had a gust there about 70 yesterday with Elsa. Hopefully we don't get anything like that, but it's still possible. It's just we don't have many sites here really to measure right in this area where this storm is making landfall. So that's kind of hurting us a little, and kind of figure out what's going on. We actually don't have a lot of information on the power outage, since this is a really rural area, which is good news, but it's a little harder to get information down here as well. So maybe some of these lack of reports, don't kind of take them as if there's not any damage. I just have to be kind of mindful, because the storm chasers in that area have kind of noted there have been some issues overall here and there that look pretty nasty. So in terms of just seeing some of that wind around. So something to kind of watch out for here. Going to have some maybe more damage in toward this region. Again, seeing the worst here moving in towards Salem right now and Taylor County. As we go over to velocity mode, you kind of see these winds here sewing on up as we get over toward the region. You can kind of see this threat as we get on over here toward areas off toward the east even as well. Going to be continuing to watch things very carefully here with this setup, with this system. You actually kind of see like rotation here getting with this storm. We have the center in here, but you kind of see like a tornadic circulation with the center on here, which is kind of interesting. But again, we're going to go ahead and pop back the broad perspective now. I do want to touch on some information I've just learned from some media reports towards Stark. Looks like might be some tree issues toward Laudy, Brooker there. That's according to WZXT in Jacksonville. But we're going to be seeing these rains move on in even further here over the next little bit. I know where I'm at, we're up over 1.5 inches now, 1.57 inches, and winds there on about 10 miles an hour. So we have our camera, so let's go ahead and take a look outside here. You can kind of see the view. You see those trees blowing some, trying to give you that perspective here, a unique perspective, a camera, exclusive camera here on Cloud Weather. So any of those conditions looking toward the west of Stark here with those trees moving around. This morning you see the clouds moving as well. I'll kind of point that out to you here. It might have to look pretty close. Might be kind of hard to see depending on the clarity that you're looking, but on my screen here you can see it a little bit better. You can see that movement there. So something that's interesting indeed. Right now winds only 4 miles an hour, 1.58 inches of rain now today from Elsa, as we continue to watch the storm system, how it impacts the region. How we kind of give you that live look at the action here. Again, looking west from the Stark area, we have that storminess coming in. Some of the worst of the weather here moving in towards Stark over the next few hours. I know that one band was pretty nasty with that wind enhancement earlier this morning. really that first band because of it being on the edge of things here. But you have that other accent even stronger there with the wind towards Dean Hattie. You're going to watch some of that spread on out here over the next little bit. It may not spread out as far toward the east because the storm has gone a little further west. I mean, so that could be a little bit of good news towards dark, toward Gainesville. Maybe seeing this spread out more just toward Lake City. We've already seen some nasty weather, some tree down reports there. You kind of get the idea. But let's go ahead and pop you back up over toward our other system once again. We're in the heart of the storm, really, when we're talking about a landfall. We're at the peak of it at the coast, at least toward parts of Dixie County. Going to be watching again in toward parts of Lafayette County here over the next little bit. So going to be watching how things kind of progress. You see Steinhatchee, they've been getting the worst of this. Be interested to hear in some of these reports how they come on out here on what's happening. Going to check some information right now behind the scenes to make sure we're not missing anything because we're on live. But sometimes we don't get these updates here in the chat. But I think they're just going to wait till 11 to call the official landfall. I would think that's what they're going to do, or maybe just wait if they don't think it. Maybe the center is. We kind of look at our meso. Our meso kind of shows that off toward the west a little. This might be kind of behind, but it is on the western side. We've talked about this storm being really unusual in that it's just completely one-sided, pretty much, with this accent. So that's something to kind of be mindful of here as we're watching things. So that center not as easily to find. Maybe we're trying to get an eye wall going last night. We had a hurricane for a little bit. We were covering that for you. The hurricane warning is still in play for parts of Dixie, parts of Levy, Citrus counties. That'll probably get dropped here at 11, I would think, since can't strengthen anymore once it's over land. But we'll go ahead and switch you back on over here toward our SPC information. It looks like the highest tornado threat more towards southeast Georgia. I know we had that tornado warning there a little while ago we were covering. We still have the flash flood warning here down toward parts of Taylor County as well as Dixie County until 1:45. So Doppler radar indicating a thunderstorm complex there, or at least heavy rain complex, where they had 2 and 2.5 inches or so of rain, give or take, between those numbers within an hour, and then additional amounts of 2 to 4 inches were expected really to occur. So gonna be watching things last 12 hours or so. You see 4 or 5 inches here towards Steinhatchee. Last hour even kind of putting that together. You see about 3 inches as we look towards southern Taylor County. And this area about a year and a half, 2 years ago, I guess it is now. They got a whole bunch of rain. It wasn't a tropical system, but we were talking about 3 feet of rain, somewhere in that range, if I do recall. So this area has gotten rain before. It's pretty rural, which is good. If this was in an urban area, let's say we were talking about a Gainesville right at the coast, per se, I'll be talking about more problems because of the drainage concerns. But luckily, we're not dealing with that here as of this point. But as we look out, we do see some rain down to the south that's been causing some issues here. Some banding toward Cape Coral as we look over the last 12 hours. You do see a lot of rain down there. No flash flood warnings, luckily, but these areas, I believe, need rain a little bit more. I know we had fire danger earlier in the year. I haven't checked recently down here, so I could be wrong on this, just focusing more on our area, but we haven't seen flash flood warnings, which is obviously a good thing, because if this was a greater danger, we would have seen a flash flood warning at some point issued for that area down there. But we'll watch some of these bands because these will be what could give us issues here later in this evening. That's why I kind of expanded that thread into early tomorrow morning with some type of rain around, at least from this system. But again, Elsa moving on through here, looking right now, 1.61 inches of rain towards dark. Now let's pop up velocity once again here. We'll pop up velocity once again as we go towards Steinhatchee. We see Salem in here as well, by the way. As I go ahead now and flip the switch, we'll pop this to full screen and you'll be able to see what's happening here as we get down here toward these areas. We're talking about 65-mile-an-hour wind, give or take, 64-mile-an-hour wind, 66-mile-an-hour wind. You kind of get the idea here. Probably about right, actually. We're looking higher up in some regard. Let's take a look at correlation coefficient. I'm not going to show us too much. I thought we might see something if we were somehow getting a circulation, but there may have been a little something in there north of Steinhatchee. But they're so far from radar. I mean, you're not going to really see much in a tropical system unless it's a tornado anyway, and so far away, probably not going to see anything. But anyway, let's get back over toward our velocity mode here. You see some of that wind maybe spreading in some. Then we're looking higher up to some extent, as we've talked about, but maybe seeing some stronger wind. Perry, Mayo, we're going to get the higher concentration though to come in soon, as we've been talking about. So let's go back on camera now. I know I normally wear my suit and tie, but we're trying to do it like this so I can be in front of the camera pretty much all day here, because wearing a suit and tie and then maybe risking power outage, not the best thing here. I don't want to get overheated per se in the weather center and just going for 12 hours in front of the wall, which we might end up having to do in a suit and tie, and not really the best thing to do here. So we're just kind of trying to stick with you. It's just me here. It's not 4 or 5 meteorologists. I'm just trying to give you the best information I can to keep you, your friends, and your family safe. But we're trying to show you as many resources as we can that we have access to here on this Wednesday morning. It's still morning, folks. We've been with you since about 4 a.m. with those tornado warnings, breaking in for those, and then some more even in this coverage here as Elsa is making that landfall here in the Big Bend in North Florida. Getting alert from the Tallahassee office now. Haven't seen many from them, but significant weather advisory now. Reports of Berrien, Colquitt, Cook, Doherty, Irwin, Mitchell, Tip, Worth. Seeing a little more of that moisture coming in there than I think we were expecting with the kind of a banding feature here off toward the north. We weren't expecting much to get them towards southwest Florida, but they're going to get this band that we've got here earlier on. That probably the only band that Tallahassee will have gotten. And we talked about maybe them getting about an inch of rain from this, and probably got an inch in here. It looks like somewhere, some spots a little more or less, but with this kind of being on the dry slot side here, you shouldn't really get too much more from this into toward Tallahassee. So that's good news. We're tracking things. Going to be waiting for that official update from the Hurricane Center. I may just go ahead and take a break here. As you see a little bit of rotation, even on a rotation tracker. Kind of interesting to see that. Could be a circulation, could actually be the storm here pretty much making landfall. Showing up in that regard. We're looking at different circulations. It's something you kind of have to investigate. You look at this, you look at the mid-level circulation, you kind of look at some other things here as well. Looking at radar, looking at satellite, Hurricane Hunter data, trying to put the whole picture together into one here. And that's what the Hurricane Center is doing right now to give you that official landfall position, which I suspect it'll be right around Steinhatchee here, and that'll be coming out soon from the National Hurricane Center at 11. They might just wait it out here or just go ahead and call it. I mean, the different definitions sometimes here with this. So we're going to go ahead and watch things. When I say different definitions, don't want to get too complicated here. I mean, it's the same definition the Hurricane Center goes by, but sometimes it looks like a storm. I know we had Dorian in the Outer Banks. We were looking at the pressure, the lowest pressure actually occurred there, even though it didn't look like the storm made landfall. They had the lowest pressure there in toward the Outer Banks. The Dorian actually made an official landfall there in North Carolina in 2019. So something that's kind of unique. You have to kind of evaluate things really close. It's something that's really hard to do sometimes when we have a storm kind of disorganized like this. If we had a storm like a Michael, it's easy to call a landfall of a Michael because you don't really even need to be a meteorologist because it's the center of the eye. But we're not dealing with that, so it makes it a little more complicated here. But definitely could be talking about that landfall right around now. We'll go ahead and go back on over toward some of our other sources, checking out some things here. Still checking out some of those winds around. It looks like Salem off toward east of Salem there, moving toward Mayo. So target those devices around Mayo. And in fact, I'm going to check some power outage details. We're not getting good information out of here because these numbers have to be higher than this. I mean, unless the grid's just really holding up well out here. I mean, the numbers, maybe they are just really low, but I suspect based on what I've seen that these are areas that are rural in nature, so it's possible we could be talking about higher numbers than what we're seeing here within our system. I do see Baker County's up to 2% out, about 5% out in Gilchrist as of the early check this morning. So the numbers keep changing, keep getting updates in. Let's pop up poweroutage.us. Again, these may not be showing the complete picture. They may be, it's possible. Not 100% sure, but these are some areas that are pretty rural in nature. I would think we'd have a higher number than just 213 customer died in Levy or 153 died in Dixie, but it's possible things are holding up that well. 153 customers in Taylor County, Madison 228. Now these numbers to be more accurate toward North Central Florida. 255 in Baker, 59 customers in Bradford. You get the idea here as we're checking things out. Some of these different numbers. I know I'm going pretty quick, but they're not adding up to too much on this. About 8,000. I know this is kind of not showing the Hillsborough outages maybe as much. So different grids, different things still in this scenario here. We'll keep you updated, of course. We'll take another break for about 5 minutes or so, and then we'll see what the Hurricane Center maybe has for us by then in terms of any official landfall information as we continue to track Tropical Storm Elsa making landfall here in toward parts of that Florida Big Bend this morning. We've been keeping you updated for the last week. We gave you the heads up here last week to have the hurricane kit up to date, and now we're having Elsa make landfall here in our viewing area. Back with you, still watching for that official landfall information, but we're just getting some new information in here just now into the chat of a gust of 71 miles an hour at Horseshoe Beach about 10 minutes ago. So pretty nasty. That's the highest we've gotten with this storm, I think, because Key West we had 70, now a gust of 71 at Horseshoe Beach here, folks. So let's go ahead and switch sources here, zoom in a little bit to kind of evaluate what's going on here, folks. Interesting actually to see that in some ways, because that means there might be an issue with that report or with the radar being displaced, because it seems the winds would be higher to the north here. So that's kind of interesting timing. That may be a delayed report actually, even though it just came in here at 10:50 from 10:40. We'll have to wait and see on that, because the velocity and the radar would suggest that wind would be further to the north here at this point. But nonetheless, a gust of 71 means that we're seeing winds in that general range here with this. That's actually verifying down to the surface. So we talked about that potential for a gust of 75, and our forecast now pretty much is verified with a gust of 71 miles an hour there at Horseshoe Beach in the last little bit. So let's take a look there. We have different views. We have one of our viewpoints up. Let's go ahead and pop this up. The weather stem site in the region. You do see what's going on here, the nastiness of things. Get the idea there as we're looking outside. And then I think we have Cedar Key as well. So let me go ahead and switch you over to that. And you'll see that one loading. You see the nasty skies there, in fact, towards Cedar Key. You see that storminess in play there, kind of looking on outside right now. So getting a little bit calmer conditions if you were to see that, though, as we go ahead now and move away from this. We'll pop on up our radar once again. Now getting reports towards Steinhatchee, Taylor County Emergency Management, reporting flash flooding with some water approaching a few homes. So we were kind of hesitant about that potential here, talking about that threat. I wanted to let you know that it could be occurring in this region, and now that is occurring toward that area again as we're watching things pulling up toward the current view. You see that report popping up, that flash flood report there, water approaching a few homes. Luckily, the worst of that rain kind of moving away, but that storm surge threat going to be pushing in here. Let's go over to our wind direction. I haven't shown this to you in a little while, so let me pop this on. You're starting to see some of that. Yeah, we're really starting to see those winds here in play now. So let me go ahead and see what I'm talking about here. We were showing this to you in the model last night, how the winds would change direction here and kind of funnel that water in when the storm made landfall. And that's pretty much what we're seeing now. Unfortunately, we're seeing that wind direction become a problem here. We're seeing that push in some surge potentially now, maybe not extreme surge, but some surge here toward Levy County, and then we're going to be watching some of that even in toward parts of Dixie County. You see right where that report there of the gust was. We're seeing some of that toward Horseshoe Beach as well. Maybe not as much toward the other report though, which is good, but eventually going to maybe try to get some of that in there. It's a little bit of an odd spot, but just have to be watching and cognizant of that potential here. Could definitely get some of these icons as the storm lifts north to kind of funnel that water in there some. So got to be careful there. This might have to be a little behind on the analysis of things, to keep that in mind too, because this isn't something that we're necessarily use all the time. But again, the wind area is really important in this scenario to see that threat. We're watching storms though. Let's go ahead and take the arrows off here for now. We'll look at Quincy. You see some storms over there. We are just seeing that one little band there. I mean, it's not a little band, it's a big band, but it's skinny in its size overall as it just stretches across the region now. Adel, Homerville, moving toward Waycross. We'll watch for some rotation in there. And then the heavier rain, more consistent rain and wind toward the south. So highest gust we've had today was 23. We're only at 3 miles an hour, but that rain up to 1.7 inches. So something to watch. That power outage threat higher to the west. Still could lose power here. Seen some power outages toward areas around Stark, but the higher threat has ultimately been off toward the west, it seems. Haven't got really the reports in, but I suspect that we're seeing some higher threats there off toward the west. So again, watching things here in the Weather Center for you. Still no new update, but that should be coming through pretty soon, the 11 a.m. advisory. So going to be watching for that, and I'll be back in a few minutes here at the top of the hour with that information here. If it is out by 11, as we watch for that official landfall to be called, some more significant weather advisories in play. Of course, the tropical storm warning still in play as well. We'll get an update on that here soon. Let's go ahead and switch over to this source just real quick. I want to emphasize this here as we again look at the storm itself. You see that on the one viewpoint. You see wind 32 in Levy. Looks like near Williston there, gust to 32 recently in that area. You see the tropical storm warnings in play as we're getting here and toward the maroon. A hurricane warning might not be in effect too much longer as you get toward the coast there. You kind of get that purple mixing in, but that's for parts of Citrus, Levy, and also getting over toward Dixie counties there, right of the coast, seeing that threat. They kept that in play even after it got downgraded to a tropical storm because they wanted to make sure things didn't kind of catch people off guard. Yes, you see I have some of these rivers plotted on here. This shows you that threat here toward the Santa Fe River. We have minor flooding occurring. Could get some worsening flooding depending on how things set up, though, with the bands later on today. Be back in just a couple of minutes. Meteorologist Casey Cloud back here at the top of the hour as the latest Elsa information just coming in. We now have a landfall in Taylor County that just off the wire here in the last few seconds. Let me go ahead and say you some of our different maps. Again, still watching the tropical storm warning. Looks like the hurricane warning just been taken away, but we do have the landfall. You see the center here on our system. In fact, west of Salem is where they're putting this, it seems. So kind of there again away from the worst of the accent because it's a little disorganized, but again an official landfall in Taylor County here over a tropical storm. The update here has winds at 65 sustained at 999 millibars and the pressure hurricane warning gone, but still watching tropical storm warning in play here. Watching this threat again as our storm system does move on in. toward our region a little bit further even. You see all this heavy rain, you can hear it. If you're maybe kind of out and about here around north central Florida, for sure, but probably shouldn't be out and about. You can hear it at your house. You can hear it maybe even through my microphone here, but let's go ahead and actually show that to you right now. We'll go on over toward our other source. You see that rain falling, those trees blowing just a little, 6 miles an hour right now, up to 1.75 inches for today here. So again, we now have an official landfall, though, a 65-mile-an-hour tropical storm, so not a hurricane landfall. That's good news, but still a strong tropical storm, nonetheless, making landfall here in Taylor County. We've been talking about this here, talking about this potential, and we're seeing that come to fruition right about now, in fact. And we go ahead and switch back on over. Again, the official landfall being called here by the National Hurricane Center in Miami. Gonna go ahead and gather more information on this here, just to get off the wires. An official landfall now of Elsa, 65-mile-an-hour tropical storm in Taylor County here. The worst off toward the east. A gust recently to 71 there in areas of the region there around Horseshoe Point, I do believe. Horseshoe Beach, excuse me, in toward that area. So again, watching things carefully with this scenario, no doubt. I'm going to go ahead and see something else here. We have a camera we can pop up, so let me go over to it. Actually seeing something here. I noticed this on Twitter. It got pointed out by a meteorologist at ABC 27 in Tallahassee. I just saw it a moment ago, and this area is covered in water now because of that storm surge. Earlier, you could see some land areas, but now being covered by that water here in the region from our tropical storm. You can kind of see that nasty situation there. So I'm trying to give you that perspective there on the Weatherstem camera toward Horseshoe Beach. So let's go ahead now, pop back on over toward our other source once again. We'll switch you away from Weatherstem and pop me back over toward our radar again. The worst moving here and toward Taylor County a little further, and also in toward Arizona Mayo. Pretty soon we're talking about McAlpin, O'Brien, Branford, Live Oak here, maybe, or maybe just on the edge for those spots, and maybe more in between as we get toward I-10 around Madison to Live Oak. So going to be watching for this threat here from Elsa, a tropical storm just making landfall here. We've been giving you a heads up. We've been talking about a threat. Now seeing that threat kind of be finalized here with that landfall, meaning the storm's not going to strengthen anymore, not going to become a hurricane again. Hurricane warnings discontinue, but tropical storm warnings for many spots in play. As we watch those winds still pick up toward parts of north central Florida, we'll keep you updated back at 11:30, unless we have some new information to come on for earlier, but still, Mayo, this is going to be some of your worst weather here over the next little bit. In toward parts of Lafayette County, already seen the worst weather towards Steinhatchee, but that storm surge, and this year's we see doing that camera there toward Horseshoe Beach. So keeping an eye on everything for you here, and just want you to stick with me.